Hello, you beautiful people. Today we're going to be talking about our former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. If you know who this man is, I'm sure you don't need any convincing to hate him more, but if you aren't immediately familiar with this forehead with a man attached to it, stay tuned for a story of good old-fashioned British political idiocy. Mr. Hancock was born in Chester, the hospital, not the zoo. Probably. He attended the private King's School, which is about as posh as it sounds, and later attended Exeter College, where he graduated with a first in philosophy, politics, and economics. For those outside of the UK, a first is basically an A. Keep these glowing grades in mind as we carry on and try and work out for yourself whether he's an idiot or a corrupt little self-absorbed weasel. I don't even have a university degree, but I think copping off with tarts in your office during a pandemic and breaching ministerial code and squandering billions of pounds in government contracts is bad? Like all men of substance, he left university to work for Daddy's computer software company. Then he moved to London to work as an economist at the Bank of England, and in 2005 became an economic advisor to our former Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne. Hancock then became his chief of staff, helping with things like administration, strategic planning, and practicing human expressions. Well, he tried his best. As is tradition, let's take a look at his voting record. He has consistently voted for mass surveillance of people's communications. He generally votes against a publicly owned railway system. He almost always voted for reducing capital gains tax. He voted for raising the bedroom tax, which means he thinks you should be charged more for having excess bedrooms. Then he voted against the mansion tax, which means he thinks you should be charged less for having excess bedrooms. He voted against nationalisation of the Royal Mail. He generally voted for reducing the rate of corporation tax. And he has voted consistently against preventing climate change and really wants to sell England's national forests to the highest bidder. As you can see, he's pretty much your average Tory, but I'll give him credit where it's due. Unlike other Tory figureheads we've covered, at least he voted for allowing marriage between same-sex couples. It's sort of sad that I have to applaud cabinet ministers for not openly oppressing gay people's legal rights, but don't accuse me of being biased anymore because I said well done, so there. Matt was selected as Conservative candidate for West Suffolk in 2010, and won his seat as an MP in the same year. He spent time as Paymaster General, which apparently is a real thing, Minister of State for Energy, and Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. But he is far more notorious for his role as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care between 2018 and 2021. Let's take a look at the timeline of Matt Hancock's political cock-ups since the pandemic started. It's the 16th of March 2020, and Matt Hancock announces to the House of Commons that all unnecessary social contact should cease. You know, because of the COVID that was killing everyone back then. 7 days later, Boris the Whig Johnson announces that the public must stay at home and certain non-essential businesses should close. During lockdown, you are only allowed outside under the following circumstances: to exercise once a day, to care for a vulnerable person, to shop for essential items, or to travel to and from a place of work if you are considered a key worker. During lockdown, the public were forced to stay at home while loved ones were buried. The mental health of the nation plummeted. And what's worse, the entire world was forced to endure Hollywood's self-absorbed public therapy sessions. Truly awful stuff. On October 11th, 2020, Matt Hancock denied claims that he broke the government's COVID drinking curfew by staying at the Commons bar beyond 10 p.m. Even if we took this absolute cockwomble at his word, it's curious that those who lead us were afforded the ability to sit inside at their bar while the rest of the country is told to do as they say, not as they do. Then, in February of 2021, Matt found a way to exercise those degrees in economics and politics he has by failing to publish billions of pounds of coronavirus-related contracts. See, he was legally required to publish the details of how he spent billions of taxpayer pounds within 30 days. The High Court made a big deal about it, something to do with honesty and transparency in government or something. Now let me break this down so we can all understand exactly what we are dealing with. The government allowed companies to apply for work contracts through something called the VIP fast lane. This means that your company's application can be placed at the top of the pile, just so long as you've been recommended by an MP. Now, this raises big questions around what might motivate an MP to recommend a company, and these concerns were proved to be entirely warranted. Let's take a look at some of the companies that received a contract, shall we? Firstly, a contract worth £252 million was handed to a company called Ayanda Capital. This is an investment company operated out of a tax haven that had zero experience in providing PPE. The company saw its earnings rise by 2,600%, even though precisely zero masks they provided could be used by the NHS. To be fair, the company is just doing what the contract told them to do. It was our own government that royally fucked this up by giving the wrong specifications to a company that has never, at all, dealt with PPE. Another £108 million contract to supply PPE was awarded to PestFix. This was a family-run company with just 16 employees at the time the contracts were issued. It sounds strange that such a small company was offered such a lucrative contract, until you learn that the company's chair met the government's procurement director at a birthday party. Now it makes sense. Well, cut a long story short, they provided a batch of masks and 6 million aprons that were about as protective as Kate and Jerry McCann. Now the good news is that they've been ordered to pay back £70 million for all of their cock-ups. There are dozens more examples of mismanaged funds for those that can be asked to take a look, and it's probably worth noting that the High Court has since ruled that the fast-track method of issuing contracts was also unlawful. So, just to recap on what we've covered so far, we have a health secretary that told everyone to lock themselves down, who is then accused of breaching social distancing in Parliament. Then he's accused of breaking the government's drinking curfew at the Commons Bar, while he also broke the law by not publishing the details of contracts that his government agreed to, using a method that has now been deemed illegal by the High Court. I know we're just about ready to write this prick off as nothing more than a human skid mark, but he's not done being a twat just yet. In June 2021, two things happened. On the 16th, Dominic Cummings took time away from searching Middle-earth for his precious to publish correspondence between himself and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. In these messages, Johnson referred to Hancock as totally fucking hopeless. Then, on the 26th, Johnson was proved correct as CCTV footage of Matt getting off with some old bint in his office was made public. He then resigned from office because Boris Johnson refused to sack him. Now I think, and this is speculation on my part, that it's because Boris has a tiny cock and no mates. This is where the Tories started to get outraged at the blatant flouting of lockdown rules by those in the cabinet. Better late than never, I suppose. It was around this time that Hancock was shown to be at the cheese and wine gathering during the first lockdown in May of 2020. That was the same day that the public was told by Matt that they could now meet one other person in an outdoor public place while remaining 2 meters apart. He then left the briefing to meet a multitude of other people in a private place while remaining less than 2 meters apart. Of course, no COVID rules were broken because this was a work gathering, obviously. Just a perfectly acceptable work-based cheese and wine gathering outside of office hours to discuss very important government things while under the influence of alcohol. Flash forward to November, and guess where this little fucking lizard is off to? He's gone and signed a contract with ITV to appear on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Bear in mind, he is still a sitting MP. The absolute cunt has spunk billions of taxpayer pounds on crony contracts. He's prioritised his business buddies' wallets over the health of the weak and the dying. He decided to stick his tongue down the throat of some old slapper in his office while our friends and family members killed themselves. And ITV decided to pay him 320 fucking grand to have him eat some rice around a campfire with boy fucking George. The absolute fuckery on display here is staggering. And while we're on the subject, Boy George can fuck right off as well, the creepy old cunt. But, you know, it's all over now, right? No need to reopen old wounds. I mean, after all, everyone's human. Whether you have a forehead that's bigger than King Kong's first dump of the day isn't relevant. The fact that we have a government that doesn't seem to care if their serving MPs ditch their responsibilities by joining a fucking game show in the Australian jungle isn't a problem. Oh, but you know what might be a problem though? That little issue of him co-writing a book with Isabel Oakeshott about his experience in government during COVID. See, Isabel is a journalist, and Matt Hancock, being the very definition of a thick old wanker, decided to give her unrestricted access to his WhatsApp messages, which she promptly forwarded directly onto the Daily Telegraph, who published them last month in what has now become known as the lockdown files. The messages have been heavily debated by those in government and in media. One thing that we should be able to agree on is that some things are less defensible than others. See, there was a divide in the Conservative Party at the time these messages were being exchanged. Some, such as Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, were sceptical about the lockdowns and were keen to get the economy back up and running. Hancock, however, was in favour of the lockdowns. Now, before you go trying to give this lump of dick too much credit, let's understand that in these messages, he admits to suppressing the fact that the Eat Out to Help Out scheme was linked to COVID cases rising. This was a political decision that our health secretary made that prioritised the careers of these fucking ball bags over the lives of you and your family. He also threatened one Tory MP to block funding for a disabled children's centre if he didn't back the government's lockdowns. Because, why not? Who honestly really cares about disabled children anyway, you know? The thing that is perhaps most obviously shocking here is that we've really gained a glimpse of what happens behind closed doors with our government. Now, of course, we should excuse some of the language that was used since it was through private messages, but we also need to understand that if Matt Hancock says that he wants to use the news of a new strain of COVID to scare the pants off people, we aren't outraged at the words he is using. We are outraged at the idea that a serving politician in a time of national crisis would choose to use fear as a tool to control the people, rather than just being honest and open about the risks. He also pushed back against the scientific consensus that isolating for 7 days after testing positive is sufficient, on the sole reason that it would imply that the government has been getting it wrong. Again, another decision that's been made by our health secretary to save his political reputation rather than for the health of the public. Let me put it this way. This man is a totally shameless bureaucrat that wasn't fit for overseeing a pencil being sharpened, never mind overseeing the country's health and social care during a pandemic. He has consistently flouted the rules that he himself set forth and had the gall to exploit his involvement in this total fuck-up for his own profit. And, as long as he is still serving as an MP, he's getting away with it. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please do like and subscribe. It really helps. Love you. Bye bye.